Radio tab and type in Prager.
You know, you're supposed to have full disclosure in America, which is correct. So in the name of full disclosure, I just want to say I like the following man I'm about to interview. All right? Just want that clear. Doesn't mean I won't maul him. But poor guy is sitting there thinking, why did I agree to go on Dennis' show again? Ken Blackwell, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Dennis, it's always good to be with you.
Thank you. Let me reintroduce you formally. Former Secretary of State of Ohio, Republican candidate for governor, now fellow at the American Civil Rights Union in D.C. Ken, would you do me a favor? I'm not even talking opinion here. Just can you clue me in at a moment's notice here about what Ohio has ruled with regard to registration and voting and time allowed before Election Day?
Well, Dennis, let me be clear. Early voting in Ohio has been the case for years now in the state of Ohio. What we had is an aberration in calendars. So we created, through a collision of calendars and the President Secretary of State's interpretation of the law, a window of about 6 days where a person could register and vote on the same day. Now, as of today, if you have not lived in Ohio for 30 days, you cannot register and vote. So that was the window of opportunity for folks who wanted to take advantage of it for noble reasons, and the window of opportunity for those nefarious organizations that wanted to exploit it for non-noble reasons. All
right. Before nobility and ignobility, let me just again understand. First of all, you said there's always been early voting in Ohio.
Well, for years. I mean,
all right, for years. Fine.
There was early voting.
What does that mean? How many days?
About 30 days.
So, and we're not talking absentee ballots.
Well, it used to be what we call absentee ballots, where you had to have an excuse for voting absentee. We now call it early balloting because you don't have to have an excuse for voting absentee. So this in terms of the liberalization of the voting procedure that has swept this country, for all practical purposes, early voting it was not just established out of whole cloth this election season.
But 30 days seems to me to be a particularly long period of time. Do other states allow that?
Yeah, there are other states that allow for early voting. Florida allows for early voting.
But how long is early?
30 days is normally the case.
Really?
That is not unusual among those states that have early voting.
Is it only?
What is unusual, Dennis, is that you do a collision of calendars and an interpretation of the law. We created in Ohio a 6-day period by which folks could register and to vote and vote at the same time. Now, it was a 4-3 decision by the Ohio Supreme Court, which is the ultimate court as it relates to Ohio law, said that the interpretation of the Secretary of State that allowed for this opportunity for fraud was okay, and that we had to have, and she had to have in place the traditional safeguards against voter fraud. Well, it's a question as to whether or not those safeguards are in place. But I will tell you, if it was not for concerned citizens using modern-day technology who put on YouTube and discussed it over the internet of what was going on the ground in Ohio by organizations like Acorn, where they were going and getting homeless folks who had temporary addresses. Heretofore, that was not allowed. The Secretary of State said temporary addresses would be allowed. So they were going to homeless shelters, getting people with temporary addresses. There is some suspicion that they were going out of state, bringing people in, giving them temporary addresses, and taking them to places to vote. But I can tell you, thousands of eyes and ears got placed on Ohio, and what was anticipated to be a situation where we would have 100,000 or more of these sort of opportunistic early voters, it now looks like across the state of Ohio, it might have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000.
20,000 people who exactly what?
Who registered and voted
on the same day.
On the same day.
Well, that's a lot of people, given the razor-thin majority.
Well, and that's why I started to, along with other voices, started to raise and send out the clarion call for vigilance. Because if you look at Ohio, I can go back to 1976. Carter beat Ford by about 11,600 votes. That computed out to about a vote per precinct in the state of Ohio. So if he had turned 6,000 votes, Ford would have retained his presidency. He didn't. But you come fast forward to 2004, George Bush beat his opponent,
John Kerry,
by 118,000 votes. If you convert or turn 60,000 votes, Kerry would be running for his second term. There has never been a Republican win the White House without carrying Ohio. Therefore, Ohio is normally the premier.
Well, all right. Well, alerting people.
So you're absolutely right.
You've done a great service, Ken Blackwell. A great service. I thank you immensely. I'm going to call on you again. We're rushed for time here. Thank you, my friend. You are listening to the Dennis Prager Show.